Okay, I'm rolling.
All right, we're rolling, folks. Wayne has sent me a message and he's asked me a question, and he asked me if there are any kind of strange tales that I could talk about from the past, travelling around like on the roads or whatever. But you know, I suppose there's been lots of them. But one that immediately comes to mind is a particularly strange incident that happened in Paris sometime in the mid-70s. I was probably around about the time of the big success of All Right, around All Right. You probably remember that one. We were doing a gig in a club in Paris, and it was a really big club, and it was a really good night. And the dressing room that they gave us was a disused restaurant that was above the venue. And after the gig, it was Bob Daisley and myself, and probably the other guys in the band, we all put our arms around each other because the crowd was great. We went, way, way. We leant back, and behind us on the stage there were curtains. And we leant back against the stage curtains, and there must have been fire doors behind the curtains, because the doors opened and we all fell out into the street. And there must have been springs or something on these doors, because they immediately closed and we couldn't get back in. So when we went round to the front of the club, I'm in Germany at the moment, they would say the Toursteers. And in England, if I was in England, they called them the bouncers. I don't know what they said in France, or we called them the security guys. They thought that we were gate crashers, and they got really angry, and they got out cans of mace and they sprayed us with it. And we were in a right state. And the roadies, they came out to wonder what had happened, because we disappeared. The security guys attacked the roadies, and I jumped on the back of one of the security guys to pull him off the roadies, and then another security guy picked up a lump of wood and he hit me on the head with it, and I went crashing down. Then we all got up, and in the end they realised that there was a big mistake. But nevertheless, we got inside the club, went up to the dressing room, and Bob Daisley, he was so pissed off with everything, he stood on top of the tables and he relieved himself all over the floor and all over the tables. It was a bit of a mad thing to do, but that stays in my mind in particular. No doubt there are a lot of other stories we can tell you, and they did actually happen in Paris, would you believe? But I won't say any more, and that's one of the first stories, and you'll probably find that one in the Mungo Jerry book that we're actually writing at the moment. It's my it's like an autobiography. And guys, you know, if you're out on the road, you be careful. This is in the words of my very, very good friend, Mr. Roberto De Nova. He's a record producer, artist, and composer. But he always used to say to me, guys, take care of your penis. It's the only one you've got. Kind of the question, I'm mumbling a bit here, but it's a long-winded kind of question, because it covers a lot of aspects, and it comes from this I suppose he's got to be a friend of mine, because he's been following me for donkey's years, Mr. John Kenneth Hornhaver. I call him Sherlock, actually, because he's always finding stuff. He finds all these odd videos from me that are been posted on YouTube, or cover versions of my songs and stuff. But he did ask me if I've got any advice for somebody that's absolutely, completely green. And it's green around here, actually. But when I say green, it means knows absolutely nothing about music, knows nothing about the music business, knows nothing about songwriting or performing or whatever. So, can I give some advice? Well, it's a difficult one, because it's a very, very, very wide question. And since the day that I came into the business, when I kind of turned professional, which was in 1970, the whole music industry has changed dramatically. And it's when I first got into music, it's when I first got my guitar, my Spanish guitar. Or I think it's Italian guitar, actually. I got that when I was 10 years old. Just about 3 months before I was 11, when I was playing skiffle, jug band music. I've said this before, probably times, lead belly music, whatever. I didn't know where it came from at the time. But how do you get started these days? Well, it's kind of very difficult, because there's music all over the world. The whole music industry, or the whole music, whatever you want, hobbyists or whatever, all around the world, it's different. And there are probably people out there that want to actually make a living out of music. Now, from my perspective, and my idea is that it's virtually impossible And you've got to be so committed. But the days have gone where you can go to a record company and they're going to sign you up and they're going to promote you and then send you off and do TV shows and radio shows and all this kind of. This is all gone. But when you do get signed these days, you're probably going to find that you have to do what you call a 360-degree deal. And a 360-degree deal means that the record company is going to want a percentage of your merchandise, your songwriting, your productions, then a percentage of your girlfriend, your wife, or your boyfriend, or what. They're going to want a bit of everything that you've done, right? And it's all about money. I was green myself. Obviously, we were all green at one time, if that's the terminology that you use. But I was eaten up with the counterculture. I mean, every 2 weeks there was a kind of paper that came out in the UK called the International Times, which was promoting the counterculture. One of the guys that used to write for it was Mick Farron, Mick Farron was in a band called the Social Deviants, which later became the Deviants. And After in the Summertime was a hit, and he used to come out to our office. It wasn't my office, I say our office because that's the office where we were based, at 37 Wardour Street, London. That's in the heart of London, in the Soho area. And in that office, it was the office was on the 5th floor of the building. Above was the Whiskey A Go-Go, the London Whiskey A Go-Go, and right in the basement was the Flamingo Club. The Flamingo Club was very, very famous for the fact that even Otis Redding performed there, and it got big jazz artists, soul artists, blues artists. They all played in this place. Jimi Hendrix did that gig before he was really famous. I think he got paid £10 for the gig. That's all we got when we played there. But it was a job to actually get the money. But going back to these days when I'm saying what you build up and you build up a following and you do this and that, and you've got to have a good repertoire because you've got to think about the entertainment aspect of it. And in the days of the counterculture, all the musicians that I knew, it was, hey man, we're not in it for the money, we're in it for the music. But retrospectively, I realised that the agents were going, yeah, the managers were going, yeah, the record companies, yeah. These guys, they don't want any money. We can keep all the money because they're only in it for the music. But later on, when all the bills come to get paid and you're not getting your royalties, you think, hey, you've got to think about the money because this is what it's all about. We've all got to pay our bills, and there's no shame in saying you want your dough for the gig, for the record company, for the writing, for the royalties, whatever. But this has been long forgotten. So a lot of people thought it was a shame. And this is probably why, unfortunately, the media have promoted the 27 Club in a great way because it sells copies, it sells newspapers, it sells magazines or whatever. But when I say the 27 Club, we're talking about, for example, Sid Vicious, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison. They died young, but their memory still grows. I said that in my song, Rock and Roll, Rock and Rock and Roll. It's a rock and roll lifestyle. You get into the rock and roll lifestyle, you might get a lot of publicity, but you might end up in a wooden box a lot earlier than you expected, because the rock and roll lifestyle to a lot of people means more whiskey, more brandy. He's taking recreational drugs. Now, look, we all know maybe it's cool to have a few spliffs. You've got to be really careful if you're going to be taking LSD or any mind-expanding drugs, because I've had friends. I mean, I made an album with Peter Green. I made it along with Vincent Crane, right? I know they're great. They were really talented artists. They're really, really clever. They did some great, cool music. But if you've got a very, very, how can you say, personality, which can be a bit on the balance, a magic mushroom can turn you over and you won't be able to work ever again. So you've got to be careful about all this stuff. And the music papers, they will glamorize all this. Look at the Hollywood stars, right? Great book, Hollywood Babylon. There's been a lot of these great stars. They were Errol Flynn, Fatty Arbuckle, Marilyn Monroe, you know, they did it all. They got the publicity. They were not, but what happened? Spend all the money, do all the stuff. The rock, I've gone off a bit away from the question, but this is a little bit of advice from someone that's been around a long time. I'm 79 years old now. I'm still up and about. I've got a problem with the food. On the road, you can do gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs, okay? But you've got to try and keep yourself healthy. Be healthy, be happy. But sometimes you can't, because the food has got so bad on the road, because everywhere you go, it's full of ultra processed stuff. Because the taste might be one thing, it might taste good, but let's face it, ultra processed food, loads of sugar, loads of salt, preservatives, all this kind, it's gonna clog your system up. At some stage, you've got to keep fit, you've got to move around. At one time, I took about 98 supplements a day. Probably a bad move, actually, what I did. But I trained and trained and trained. The reason I did all this stuff is, when I was 11 years old, I weighed, I don't know what it is in kilos, but in excess of 11 stone, okay? And me and another guy at school, we used to have to go and get weighed every week or every 2 weeks to watch our weight. You know, he blamed it on to taking his parents giving him cod liver oil. I was given cod liver oil, right, whatever. But even though I got down to a kind of a good weight and a good shape, psychologically, I looked in the mirror and I still thought I was fat. I still thought I was overweight. Well, I had a bigger gap in my teeth than I've got now, a big bum, big ass, right? And my nickname at first was Pudding, and then it became Jumbo, and the name Jumbo stuck. But this is the thing, I trained and trained and trained. I did loads of exercise. I used to ride a bike. I used everywhere. I used to go on a bike. I used to walk everywhere. I got really in a good shape, and I stayed in a good shape for years. But I must say that one thing happened was I got totally ripped off by the record company, by the publishers, by everything, and I got myself in a big litigation battle. Right, and the litigation battle was such a pain. Even in those days, I was paying £500 plus VAT to the lawyers, which is a lot of money to pay out. It doesn't reflect on what if a guy goes down the road and he's drunk, or a girl or whatever, and they cause trouble, they cause some havoc, they get taken away by the police, they get taken to the magistrate's court. Their fine won't reflect the cost of the legal fees if you've got in a litigation or a litigious, whatever the correct word is. I was spent so much time looking at a computer. I hate it. I hate staring all day. I like to be out in the fresh air. We're out in the fresh air now. I like to walk about. I like to have fun. I like to walk the dogs. I like to stretch. Stretch, yeah. I'll tell you one thing that you can do. You don't have to belong to a gym to get fit or to keep fit. Let me tell you that. The gyms are making loads and loads of money because you go sign up to a gym, you have to pay a vast subscription fee. And that subscription fee would be like your phone bill, like your cell phone bill. It's going to go up and up and up over the months, just a little bit at a time. There's a famous supermarket chain in the UK, and they say every little helps. Words to that effect, and it does, because a little bit here and a little bit there, it all adds up to one big thing. Before you know it, you're paying a big subscription for your television subscription fees, all this kind of stuff, and it all adds up. And it's a great shame, because in this day and age, everything's got more and more and more expensive. And you could say, if you can't cope with your expenses, it's self-inflicted, okay, because you're living beyond your means. And I live beyond my means at a certain time, but sometimes it's not your fault, because the government lets everybody put their prices up. So you could be managing your budget really well, your monthly income, and then suddenly, bang, something goes up, this gets higher, that gets higher, and then when you were comfortably off, you find that you're in a minus in credit. So I'm getting off the subject again, but this is all about what you want to tell people, or what I want to tell people when they're green, or what John Kenneth Hornhaver has asked me about advice that I would give. I was actually kicked out of my own band, which is a pretty strange thing to happen when I formulated the whole thing and I wrote all the songs and I sang. Well, I didn't write all the songs, I wrote 99% of the songs. It was me that did all the stage stuff and talked on stage. And this was something that I built up. I was told that illness is a blessing. Okay, now I damaged myself through overtraining. I went to see a physiotherapist, and the physiotherapist's name, who's unfortunately passed away now, and he's younger than me, 7 years younger than me. He passed away, Richard Goldie. And he taught me meditation, and he taught me transcendental meditation. And we spoke about other things. We spoke about Sanskrit, we spoke about life, we spoke about all these things. And he said illness is a blessing. Now, you think, you analyse that, you think, now, this is true. Because when you're ill, or somebody close to you is ill, you value their life more, you value their well-being more, so maybe you're giving out more love, and you don't realise that. And if I hadn't damaged myself, if I hadn't injured myself, I would never have gone to see this guy. Okay, so I spent a lot of time with him, and we talked and talked and talked, and he was a saxophone player. He didn't play much saxophone when I went down for the physiotherapy stuff. But then he said, in the summertime is a celebration of life. Now, this was an absolutely brilliant phrase, because it is a celebration of life. Look, I'd say in the summertime when the weather is high. Now, high pressure. People wonder what I'm talking about or what I'm singing about, what I'm writing about. When the weather is high, you can stretch right up and touch the sky. So a feeling of euphoria. You've got a nice day, because when you've got high pressure, inevitably, it's not going to rain. It's going to be dry. And if you've got a nice, like look round, look at the sky now. Look, we've got a blue sky, right? We've got green fields. We've got lovely green trees. Look, the sun's up there. You can't even get the camera up there because it's going to blow the lens of the camera out because it's so sunny. All you can see is the trail of mist, or whatever you want to call it, or exhaust from the aeroplanes that are flying through the sky. So this is a great thing to start off with, isn't it? In the summertime, when the weather is high, you can stretch right up and touch the sky. And that's why I wrote a song called Touch the Sky. Touch the sky, touch the sky. Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? So that's just one good thing. But this is another thing. We'll analyse the lyric of In the Summertime another time or another day, and I'll go through the whole lot with you, because I've been told that I wrote something which is totally politically incorrect, and that is because it's not understood. Now, a lot of people write lyrics and you don't know what they're talking about, right? There are some songs that just can't be covered, because you record in those days, in the 60s, 50s and before, sometimes maybe later, what was captured in the studio was a performance. These were great songs and they stand up on their own. And Stevie Winwood was such a great performer as when he was only really, he was about 16 or 17 when he was doing this stuff with Spencer Davis Group. And when I was playing the guitar for Jackie Edwards, he used to do a cover version on stage of Satisfaction, and he did a great job of it. But really, the Stones is one thing, but the performance that Otis Redding managed to do and in the studio, and the performance was captured. Now, there's a great book, I can't remember who wrote it, called How the Beatles Destroyed Rock and Roll. And if you're interested, it's worth reading it. Although they don't cover all the music that's out. For example, there's nothing about jug band music in there. But if you're interested in books about music, is another one you should read. It's called Tra La La Boom Die. There's an old song called Tra La La Boom Die, Tra La La Boom Die. I don't know what it means. I haven't got a clue, right? That song caused a lot of trouble. There was a lot of litigation regarding that song because there was a breach of copyright when the song came, like by the composers or whatever. So this is an interesting thing. Look, I'm going to shut up now, right? Because I've talked for too long and this has got to be edited and chopped down a little bit. So once again, be kind to children, old people and animals, and have fun in the sun, and God bless you all.